This was the initial Israeli strikes hundreds in hospital, Palestinians say. Then it turns into at least 500 dead in strike on Gaza hospital, Palestinians say. At least 500 dead in blast at Gaza hospital, Palestinians say. So even that headline from the New York Times changed 3 different times. Why did it change 3 different times? As they got into more of the details, they found out that it wasn't true. There wasn't 500. That there wasn't a rocket, Israeli missile that hit the hospital. When you're looking at what happened, it was hit in the parking lot. There's a couple cars that were destroyed, but the hospital is still standing there, as we all can see, right? We have our eyes to see, right? So it was a rocket that hit the outside of a hospital, and it wasn't an Israeli missile, because an Israeli missile would leave a crater. You don't see a crater; you see damage consistent with the rocket. Now, the reason why I'm even showing you this is this what I do know. What I do know is I don't know, because I wasn't there. They're not allowing independent journalists to get in there. What I do know is that I don't know. I don't know if it was Israel responsible for it or it was the jihadi military responsible for it. Be careful with people that are so certain to tell you what happened. I saw a artist that I follow who's a Palestinian, and he was frantically yelling into his phone, telling people that they shot a missile at a hospital, freaking hospital. They're savages. And whenever people are so certain to yell into a camera and tell you what they know without being there on the ground, without having any real evidence, because this is still at nighttime, be careful of the people that are so absolutely certain to give you a specific paradigm and speak with certainty, because a lot of times they're just regurgitating what their side says. That's all that's happening. They're just regurgitating what their side says. And when you take in, I have a bias against all Palestinians because Hamas are terrorists and the Palestinians voted in Hamas, or I have a bias against Israelis because I feel like Zionism is bad for the world and Jews are bad or whatever. And so therefore, I'm always going to think the Jews are bad and they're lying. This is how misinformation spreads in time of war. Now, let's look at some of the other slides. This was released. Now, again, I'm not an expert on accents, right? But I'll give you guys both sides. This was supposedly intercepted by the Israelis, and this is a recording. You could play some of it.
Disclaimer, it was posted by the Mossad satirical, some sort of, I don't really know what this is.
Yep.
But other people are sharing it around too, so it could be fake.
So we don't know if it's real or not. Some people have said that those accents don't, that Arabic is bad, that they say they're speaking with a bad accent. They don't sound like Gazians in the way that they're speaking. But there was a recording released where they're basically admitting that this came from one of their own rockets misfiring from the hospital and then shooting. And then there's been footage that was wrong with a timestamp and then footage that was right with the timestamp. It's a mess, right? It's a mess. Go ahead.
I'm telling you, this is the first time that we see a missile, and so that's why we're saying it belongs to the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. What? They are saying it belongs to Palestinian Islamic Jihad. It's from us. It looks like it. Who says this? They're saying that the shrapnel from the missile is local shrapnel and not the Israeli shrapnel.
Okay, so they're naming names here. So this is what Israel's releasing, right? On top of the images from the ground. Yeah, so if you're looking at the images, an Israeli missile is not going to hit a couple cars. An Israeli missile is going to blow out the whole parking lot would be gone with an Israeli missile. And so Israelis are saying, like, we this isn't us. We're pretty sure that this was Hamas or the Islamic Jihad or whatever they're called, shooting something from their own side, because they're constantly firing records. I mean, I think there's over 5,000 missiles that have been fired from Gaza into Israel. And a missile is not doing that kind of damage. That's a rocket damage, and you're going to see a crater in the ground, like a big sunken hole in the ground when they fire. And so this, according to them, Palestinian Islamic Jihad is responsible for this specific situation at the hospital. On top of which, it wasn't 500 people that were taken out. Any number of civilians, especially civilians gathering at a hospital, is extremely tragic, right? And I reached out to some of my folks who are in the area right now, and I just asked them. I actually reached out to a friend that is not Israeli. He's not Jewish. I asked him, like, what do you really think about this, right? And this isn't in his best interest, or, you know, I'm gonna keep his identity private. But he was basically saying to me what he told me. Again, this is not an Israeli citizen. What he told me was, it doesn't make sense for Israel, while the world is watching, and as America is about to fly in to shoot a rocket at a hospital in the middle of all this. Not to mention, if we are to be charitable to Israel, which I know it's difficult for some of you guys to be charitable to Israel, that it's not in Israel's best interest to do that, nor does Israel make it a point to go after civilian infrastructure and casualties. They claim that Hamas uses humans and civilians as shields, and therefore they're going after Hamas, and oftentimes, unfortunately, these folks get killed. Now, here's the issue with that, is that not too long ago, Israel lied about a reporter. It was a Christian Coptic reporter who was killed, and Israel first spun it and said, no, it was the Palestinian fire, that killed him. It was basically friendly fire that killed her. And then months and months and months later, it came out that, no, it was proven that Israel killed. It was Israel fire that killed her. So Israel isn't without flaws and definitely has a history of lying and spinning these things as well. My issue here is the absolute pilot tricks that are being played here to go after one side and take one side or the other side's position, right? And I think that's unfortunate, and I think this is only going to stir up more conflict and make the situation more volatile. And now this is becoming a social media game, which is crazy to think about. That war is becoming a social media game. That who has the better PR team, who has the better ability to get the images out faster, or even who has the better ability to create false images and fake images and deep fakes and all these types of things, that is going to be what drives this stuff in terms of pressure from Hezbollah to get involved, pressure from Egypt to not open up the border so civilians could get out, pressure from to Iran to get in, and America is trying to get their citizens out, but Egypt won't open up the border in the south. The entire situation is a complete mess, and the stakes I don't think have ever been higher. Like let's not be naive. These are some really high stakes situations here. If Iran and Hezbollah gets involved, it's likely that America gets involved. If America gets involved, it's likely a World War III situation. Okay, Iran may have nukes. Israel is agnostic on if they have nukes. We know China has nukes. We know Russia has nukes. Obviously, America has nukes. There's mutually assured destruction, but that is scary. Not to mention there's a whole another war being fought there in Russia, in Ukraine with Russia, which, by the way, Russia, extremely more careful with how they entered the situation, obviously, in Ukraine in terms of say what you want. They did not, they avoided civilian casualties for sure. Or they made an effort to in the same way Israel made an effort to. There's probably civilians that unfortunately got killed in that. And so Ruslan was the Israeli military itself that came out and announced after an investigation that they had accidentally killed a reporter. Don't equate Israel lying to Hamas lying. No, that's fair, Jonathan. That's fair. What I'm saying is the initial report, Jonathan, and I think we would all agree, is that initially Israel said, no, we had nothing to do with that. This is what happened. And then later they admitted to it. Whether I'm pro-Israel or not pro-Israel, which obviously if you've been watching me cover this, you would know where I stand. Israel did lie, right? We could all agree. Israel did lie. Israel was deceptive at some point. I'm not saying they're being deceptive now. I'm saying for people who already have a biased, negative view, usually this is called anchoring bias. Your first perception, your first introduction to someone is going to frame how you view them moving forward. So if you have a negative perception of Israel starting and then they do something to confirm it by saying we didn't kill that reporter and then later on confessing to killing that reporter, you already have a bad taste in your mouth. And that's how a lot of people in the Arab nation are feeling about this situation. They don't have enough good reason to believe. Israel could say, we don't target civilians, we don't target civilians, we don't target civilians, and yet civilians are getting killed. Now, I would agree that's on Hamas, but this is the tension that we're living in right now. And this tension can spin out of control. Do you think this is going to have an effect on the upcoming presidential election when it happens? Listen, I think Biden could potentially be the cool head that diffuses this. Maybe. I don't know. I'm praying he helps. I definitely think this makes Trump look bad. Like Trump out here talking crazy about Netanyahu and about the whole region and saying Hezbollah is very smart. Yuck. What are you doing? This is not the time to try to score political points. And so, yeah, I don't think this is a good look for Trump, in terms of the way he's talking about this stuff. And so Ruslan, Russia killed a lot of Ukrainians. So there's a difference between civilians getting killed in a war versus intentionally going in and killing civilians. We have anybody that's objective and reasonable and rational has to be able to acknowledge that. There's a difference between going in and intentionally killing civilians and saying, hey, we intentionally went in to kill military personnel, and unfortunately, civilians were in a way and they got impacted. I think that is where the crux of how people are perceiving this is, unless you were brought up Palestinian, hearing stories of Israeli soldiers flippantly and indiscreetly hurting Palestinian civilians. Your perception of that is going to be tainted. But from my vantage point, again, I think it would be extremely foolish for Israel, while the world is launching, to flippantly shoot a missile anywhere near a hospital as the president, as the leader of the free world, and arguably their most important ally in the situation. I think that's fair. I think America is Israel's most, is landing in Tel Aviv, and they do something so reckless and so flippant. That is very difficult for me to wrap my brain around, because I think even though Israel has a very conservative government and they're very much into being an ethno-state, I don't think they're this flippant. So that's where I'm at on this. We see, according to the Bible, that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out when we get aligned with God's will. For the Christians watching this channel, I want you guys to implement these spiritual disciplines in your day-to-day life. And the only way I've been able to do this consistently is through writing down my prayers in a prayer journal that does a few things. One, it allows me to reflect and come to God humbly and ask Him to move on my behalf. And two, it allows me to document my prayers, which ultimately help me remember the very things that I was praying for and see the hand of God tangibly in my life when He answers them. So I would urge you, consider writing down your prayers. It could be in a blank notebook. It could even be on your phone. Or you could check out the one I personally designed and used for my own quiet time and spiritual discipline that I think will be a huge blessing. It's the exact structure and system that I've used for years to pray and be more consistent in my spiritual disciplines. You can pick yours up today by clicking the link in the pinned comment below. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.